Hello, this is David Braun with Automated Valuation Technologies, and today we want to talk a little bit about the Compass template that helps you make your adjustments. Now, the title of this is called Buttons, Buttons, and Buttons because this is a highly programmed spreadsheet. This is one of the reasons it may not run up in the computers up in the cloud well, and it probably is going to require the real paid for Excel to operate. Now, first we start with a button when you first begin, and you should do this button, read the agreement in the template. So you don't want to have to do this every time you open one up. So it comes over and it reads the agreement, and then you click the button that says I agree. Now, once that's done in your template, you would save your template. Then every time you open with a shortcut, the Compass, you won't have to do that anymore. So most of the buttons that we're looking at are the buttons that you want to see as your overview are these buttons on the right side here. Okay. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is click this one that says full screen toggle. And when I click that, it goes full screen. If I click it again, it goes back, not full screen. So you can see your bars up here. I'm going to click it full screen. Another way to get out of this, if you're on another page, would be to hit the escape key and it will go out of full screen. Now, the little compass is a button. It tells what version this is. The one we're looking at today is beta version 3. It runs until December 7th, 2017. This is meant for people to download it and use it for a year. There's no charge for this, and the idea is, let's see how it goes. You will need, and here it just tells that it was programmed by me, David Braun. Now on the cover, we did mention here, to make full use of this product, you'll need the user manual and the book, the Valuation Analyst, Research and Extracting Adjustment Rates. The software is free, but I am trying to push this book to kind of fund the software and the book that I wrote. And the principles that we use here, a lot of them are in the book, The Valuation Analyst. Okay, so let's think about some of these buttons. Now, coming down on the right side, the first one is import data. If you've downloaded, I'm going to click this. If you've downloaded, I don't have a workbook even open, but if you've downloaded a workbook or your comps from your MLS onto a comma delimited or a regular Excel spreadsheet, you just have to have it open. Has to be open, not closed. And when you click this, it will find it and you will identify what page and it will import the data. Now you'll have to do some mapping and those kinds of things, but it'll bring that will bring your data in. After your data is in, then you would see this. You would have your comps loaded here, and you could from here, you could also run a correlation coefficient report. And I'm going to lower this. I've got it at 0.7, 0.7 and above a 0.7 and below a minus 0.7 would be some pretty serious correlation. Now to get some correlation, I'm going to tell it to show us everything below a point or above a 0.5. And I will run this, and I have three that showed up. Condition and the basement finish have a 0.51 correlation. Condition and pool had a minus 0.64, and quality to pool had a correlation of 0.65. Now, if some of these were 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, you might have collinearity. And that's discussed in a lot of these things. I'm just going to say is discussed in the book, The Valuation Analyst. That's discussed in the book. Tell you a little bit about what that is. So there's what that button does. This button is load data. This button now is going to take your sales and it's going to load it into the spreadsheets. Now, I say spreadsheets because it's actually using 10 different spreadsheets. And the reason it does that is so it can calculate true residuals. It wants a spreadsheet for each sale. You have to have 10 sales. So once the comps are loaded, then you would click the subject button and you would load your subject data. And I have the subject data list loaded here already. So I'm going to say load. And I think probably already have them loaded, but it doesn't hurt to load it twice. Now, manual adjustments, this is the first place that you get to work on the grid if you want to. Here's the first part of the grid, and there are like 10 sales on here. Let me get up so you can see them. Our 10 sales are on this grid, and it covers the kind of things that most automated valuation models don't really look at. And that's the property rights, which most of the time in residential appraising, they're going to be fee simple, but they could be something different. And it's in the textbook, so I left a place for it. Financing, conditions of sale, concessions. If any of those are here that you know about, you could put them in. Now, the idea of only using 10 sales versus maybe 50 sales in a regression analysis, when you have 50 sales, you don't even pretend to look into this stuff. But when you have 10, you could start now. The more adjustments that are made before you run the model, the better. Okay? And anytime you run an analysis, the more adjustments that are made on the other property features other than the one you're working on, the better. And you have some of these down here, view, design, and you could enter them here. If you know what they are, you could enter them here, and that helps the analysis get started. Now, in a minute, we're going to run in that kind of an automated valuation model. It's called the Mimic, and yes, I know it's spelled wrong. That's the whole idea, is to make it different from the real way you spell Mimic. And it wants some information from the appraiser and set the rules. So let's look at this button, set the rules. Excuse me. Anything in white the appraiser can set. Now what this helps do, and this also helps, let me tell you, for example, we're looking at the site, and in this case, I didn't use site size. I used a rating for each of the 10 sites. I rated them, I think, from 1 to 3 in this case. This says 1 to 5, but as long as you do it consistently, it wouldn't matter. You could rate them from 1 to 5, or you could rate your sites from 1 to 3. So don't get hung up on this 1 to 5. It doesn't involve the structure of what happens in the background. But when you say, in this case, I said 0 to 30, for each rating 1 to 3, we're going to look at for anywhere from 0 to 30,000 in the other analysis. And this also helps the Mimic. It tells the Mimic to stay in this range, look in this range. Because as an appraiser, you already know a lot about what's a reasonable adjustment. Okay, so these are set, and I'm not going to go over all these because this is really about the buttons, but you set these all the way you want them. Make sure they're set, and after you set them, you would hit the apply, and then that goes out in the various places in the worksheets and sets them up. You could click reset to default if you get in here and you start messing around with them and you say, oh my gosh, I don't like what I've done. And of course, this button will just close this sheet. Now, if you don't like these, you say these aren't anything. David's market isn't anything like my market. You could actually open up, there's a sheet in here hidden, right click on any tab and unhide. Well, let's go ahead and see what it's called, unhide, and it is called defaults. And you could unhide it and you could change it. I don't know why I opened the agreement back up, but let's close it. And so let's go back to set rules. And you could change it. Now, if you change the defaults, it won't help if you do it in this workbook. You have to do it in the template. You have to do it in the template. And what I have found appraisers have done with some of my products in the past, they might save template, maybe like they set up these defaults for like 3 property markets, high priced, medium priced, low priced. Okay, so once these are set, that resets to the defaults that you can change. You have to hit apply. If you change one of these, you have to hit apply or it won't take effect. Okay, now then there's the mimic. So I'm going to hit the mimic. And the mimic is an artificial intelligence. It's not purely mathematic. Because it tries to deal with randomness. Remember, randomness is what we talk about in the valuation analyst. It's the main culprit to what we do as analysts. It gets in our way and it causes us to get the wrong outputs. And that's why the book talks about the principle of expected conflicting outputs. There's nothing wrong if you take data and you analyze it paired sales, and then you maybe analyze it with regression and you look and you go, oh gosh, they're giving me different answers, or some other way that you might do it. You'd expect if you try 5 ways, maybe a couple of them might be the same, but a lot of them are going to be different. So the appraiser has to be involved in this. Now, so the mimic works hard to deal with this randomness. So it's not going to give the same answer every time, even for the same data. If it gets done and I ran it with different data, it would give a different answer. So it tries to not really think, but it just approaches it a little bit differently. Now, the mimic, it's amazing how much computer power is trying to analyze how many calculations that the mimic runs in about the 3 minutes that it runs. And I first came up and it was such a high number, I said, well, I don't think that's even possible. So I set up a macro in Excel and I ran it for 3 minutes. And I said, wow, seems like the limit's here, but I was getting a lot more. Well, remember I said I have 10 spreadsheets in this. And each spreadsheet has hundreds of things that calculate. So if I change one number, if I do one thing different, then it runs maybe 100 calculations on 10 sheets. That's 1,000 calculations. What I didn't know about Excel, because I timed it, if I time a lot of spreadsheet calculations with the macro calculations, the spreadsheet calculations don't add any time really. They're almost instantaneous. So believe it or not, there's millions and millions and millions of calculations that go on when the mimic runs. As a matter of fact, if you as an appraiser took 5 seconds to make each calculation, you could spend years doing what it just calculated. Literally years that you could spend making the same calculations that it just did. Now, I'm going to talk about, just because you might wonder why some of these are green. What this means is that when it loaded, it noticed that all the properties had 2-car garages, or the garage was rated. You could use the number of garages to rate, or you could rate it some other way. You could start with no parking, on street parking, driveway parking, to carport. You do it however your market needs to do it. In this case, with this data, we just did it with the number of garages, type of garage, and everything had a 2-car garage. In other words, they were all the same. So it puts an X and it put it in green, and the green means it's ready to go. It's like go, the stop sign, go. You don't have to worry about that. And so these were all the same. So we're not going to have to make any adjustment. It also puts an X and it tells the mimic, don't worry about these. And we're going to study a little bit more about X's in a minute. Well, it won't be in a minute for this. This is buttons, but we're going to study about the X's in the next video, which really explains how this works. Now let's see what buttons we want to just keep covering the buttons here. All right, now select use my inputs. Now let's say that I look at this right off. Now let me mention this to you. Remember, the mimic is a black box. And reviewers aren't going to necessarily accept this. Now, maybe down the road, if we leave the mimic alone and appraisers use it and that's studied, and it's possible that you could say the mimic gave this answer, therefore I considered it. But right now, it's just a black box and nobody knows how good it is. I don't even know how good it is, and with a lot of real data. But in order for adjustments to work, you have to, like if I'm concerned about this side adjustment, I have to have some adjustments in these other things, in the quality and the day since sale, the time. The day since sale is the time, market conditions. Um, Location, pool. I have to make some. Now, you don't have to use the mimic. You could just guess. You know, you could put in your own numbers and just guess at it. In this case, the mimic did come out really, really close with the residuals, because this first one, and we can see down here that the MAPE, the first one is the MAPE, that's the mean average percentage error. So basically it is the average of these little blue dots here. And while we're looking at these little blue dots, we can see there's another button here, residual breakdown. I can see the actual residual that was predicted on the 10 different spreadsheets for each comp, how close it was. Now you can see this data, you can check your randomness in the market here, and you can see that we're a plus or minus 2%, because this is not real data that I put in. This is almost perfect data. It has very little randomness in it. I think it had plus or minus 2%. And you can see that's almost what it has here, because you can see some of these. If I open this back up, you can see some of these. What's the highest? 2.2 and a minus or minus 2.2. What's the highest positive? What, 0.71? Is anything higher positive? No, not really. So it's like 1 to 2. And that's the way the market, this data was made up, because we're just showing buttons here. We're really not trying to appraise anything. And that's why it came out so good down here. And I think the real answer, like with this predicted 507, the real answer is 499,500. So you're like within 1% of it, or like 0.5% or something. Now, but if I didn't like this, if this came back and I'm rating, in this case, remember, I'm rating the sites 1, 2, and 3. And probably, I think the way this data is set up, each site is different by $10,000. So if the site came back and for some reason this showed up to be 1,000, I might say, man, that's not enough. I don't believe that. So if it came back 1,000, I could just type in and override it. So let's say that maybe, let's say 7,000. Let's say it came back 1,000. I didn't agree with that. I could put 7. But for this to take, I have to click use my inputs. And what that does, it feeds that number into the spreadsheet. Now down here, these numbers changed. But that's what this use my inputs, and that's why it's in red, because you want to use that a lot, especially later when we see play what I call play the check game, or the X game, play the X game. You're going to use this a lot. Okay, so once you get after the mimic, you're going to jump over and look at these buttons. Okay, now let's go over here. What does this mean? Well, let's see that in a second. I'm going to click the site button, and what it does is it actually ran for analysis, and you're going to notice something new if you've seen this before from beta versions 1 and 2. You're going to notice something a little bit different, because this is what we're in beta version 3. Yeah. So I used to key off of these, which was wrong. This is the answer after it puts the adjustment amount in. So this is after it's in, and then this is the cumulative paired sales. So we want the answer before it puts this in, when it's just trying to figure the answer. It doesn't know what the answer is, and it actually looks at side. It actually looks at, it looks like it's a minus, maybe is it a minus? I'm trying to look at my scale here. Where I can tell what it is by going to my set rules and look at site. Site is set to be from 0, and then it'll try 1,000, 2,000. It just keeps trying from 0 to 30,000. So there it is, 0. I don't know why I had trouble seeing that, to 30,000. So, and so when it's when the paired sales looks, it thinks the answer should be 7,500 is what the answer should be. The sensitivity slope, remember there's 4 analyses here that runs. The sensitivity slope, which is what you normally look at sensitivity, but normally you look at the average deviation of them, and we've went with the slope. I think it's a little bit better. And the slope got down to 0. We want it when the slope's 0 for the adjusted sales prices, and it got down there at 8,000. And then we look at the residuals, and that is the residuals of each of the 10 comps, how its own individual grid predicted for itself. And they got better and better up until about 8,000, and then they fell off. So when we got to like 10, when you got here at 20, you see the slopes, the R squared is way lower, and the MAPE, which actually I had to use a 1 minus, but it doesn't matter here for this. So the answer should be between 7 and 8,000. Now the computer puts in, I have a little algorithm that puts in 7,500. It picks what it thinks it wants to kind of fight market drift and some other things, but you could put any number you want in there, and we'll see that in a minute. But for now, now this runs the gross living area, and it ran from looks like maybe $30 up to 170 maybe. Doesn't look like it quite, 175 maybe. Whatever is set in the rules, that's what it's going to cover. And it gave a range from 130 to 132. This 19 is the average variance, and it tells you how good the 132 is. So you could click each of these. Now, if you click the garage, it's got an X in it. That means it's not going to run. You see that it's not going to run. So you would click each of these buttons to run those analysis, and you can override those analysis. Okay. Now, so right now we're looking at we can get 2 other charts right now. Say just stop. I want to see what is my regression. And the regression line is really, and I call it regression, but I need to quit saying that. It's like the regression line, but it's really just R squared. And it's the R squared of the actual sales prices to the predicted sales prices for each of the comps based on their own sales grid. And it gives a 0.99. So that's R squared of the sales prices and to the predicted sales prices. I can also see them here. I can see where they lay. I think the little square ones, the little square brownish red ones, are what happened before this. So let's say I put in, let's put $5 in here, and we probably are going to make things worse. So let's go to the residual grid, and it changed. I don't know exactly what it did, but well, no, it didn't change. What I did was wrong. That's why it was throwing me off. I've got to hit 5 and then do what I told you to do. You have to use my inputs. Now let's go back to it, and now you can see the blue lines got worse. The blue lines, it went to blue and they got worse. So we know $5 is not right. Okay, so let's let it throw in what it wanted. I think what was it, 131? There it is. Okay, so now what's our next one? Select comps. So let's go to select comps. And in the select comps, we have some buttons. So we've got buttons and buttons. And these are the white. Remember, the white's what you can change. It's giving 25% based on the location adjustment, the percent of the location adjustment, then 25% to the time, 15% to the gross adjusted, 5% to the residual, and 30% to the subtotal 1. Now, subtotal 1 is what we looked at on this grid, manual adjustments. It's these top things. And you know, if you have a lot of these adjustments, you may not want to use these because that's a lot of explaining to do. Like, I would rather use the ones that don't have much concessions, or an odd conditions of sale, or if it's not fee simple. Obviously, I would rather not use those. So that's what this one is. Call it subtotal 1. And we gave a lot of weight to it. And you could change these. This works all right. Now to find out sort, it puts the X's where you want it. Now I'll mention when you see places where X's go, you can click one time and it puts an X in. Then you click one time, click off, then click back, it puts it back. That's not Excel. That's just a little programming that I put in, a little code that helps you do it faster. So maybe you wanted to unhook this. It's going to take if you do this, it's only going to take the top 3. Okay. And if you take one off, you'll probably notice down here the average will change. That's 508, and it changes just a little bit. When you if you mess with these and you don't remember how to get them back, you can hit defaults on that. And to set these as defaults, you would actually have to set these themselves in the template. And then you would hit close. I'd leave my 3 checks and I'd hit close. All right, now what other buttons do we have? We have the select comps. We got it. So now we have build the report. So basically we're saying we're done. We like what we've got. We like our value estimate. We've seen our charts and we're happy. And then we're going to go, because basically what we're looking at here, it's a little bit different. This is just a, it's the sheet is named and it's marked red down here to CP, because that's for control panel. But it's really the user interface, and it's kind of unique that this user interface deals with the adjustment grid without you really going to it, except here in the manual, until you get ready to build the report. So I'm going to build the report. Oh, and it's warning me right now that it doesn't want to make the report until I run some of those. Now, it did the report, but let's go back, and looks like it wants me to run those real quick. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you what the all button is. The all button will run these instead of you running them one at a time, if you trust what my little algorithm puts in for the amount. You can hit all and then just let it run. And now it's running all 10 of those. The ones in the gray, actual age, bedrooms, and baths, they're not involved. If you want to put those in, you have to do those adjustments yourself. Now I know everyone's been run except the garage. Remember, all the garages were the same. In this case, these are all the same, so I don't have to make them. If they weren't, you'd have to make your own. Now when I go to build report, okay, now it makes the front part of the report that's going to explain your adjustments, and here they are, coefficients. I could put right up here on top adjustments, which I'll think about doing. Shows your R-squared relationship between the actual sales prices of the comps to their predicted sales prices. It talks about the overall MAPE of a 0.6, which is just ridiculous. Real data is not going to be that good. Now here's your evidence that the report predicts. And for the gross living area, it's got 4 things. It's got the slope, it's got the R-squared for the residuals, the MAPE for the residuals, and it's got the paired sales analysis. So you've got 4 different things. So your answer should be between, what's the high and the low here? 128 and 133. So we should be between 128 and 133, and we are 131. So that explains where our adjustments came from. So this would be what go in your report as explanation for your adjustments. Then you go to the grid. If you'd filled out some of the stuff earlier, it would be in here, and the view and all this would be in here. But now you've limited it to 3 sales, and now you need to go and, pull those MLS sheets and do them pretty thoroughly. And then you'll have a reconciliation, talk about where your comparables came from, and then do a final reconciliation and your value. In theory, if you're doing a non-secondary market right now with this beta, you could actually use this grid and this part of your report for your direct sales comparison approach. Okay, so I think that's an overview of buttons. And I'm trying to see if there's any more buttons, but I think we've covered them all. So that's what shows you some of the buttons. And be sure you can click here and you can see my email, david@avttools.com. Go ahead and shoot me some comments. You may say I can't use it, I can't figure it out, I don't like it, or whatever you want to say. Okay, thank you very much.